If you want to, I don't know, dance in front of the car, feel free to do so. Hey everyone, welcome back to Sgcarmart. So you might have heard me say this before, but there is a new brand in town. And you might have heard me say this before, but it's Chinese, it's all electric, and it's an SUV. This here is the new Series 3. Now, before we talk about the car specifically, just a quick introduction to the Seres brand. So if you're unfamiliar, Seres is a brand of EVs as part of the larger Seres group, which includes brands such as Seres, Ato, Lantian, Fengguang, and DSFK. And with a production figure of 1 million, Seres is actually already a top 5 sales leader in the luxury segment in China. And according to Brand Finance Automotive, it is also the fastest growing automobile brand in 2023. This year is the first Seres model to be introduced to Singapore, that is the Series 3, and it is a CAT B COE car. Now let's take a closer look at the Series 3. So everyone nowadays wants an SUV, and with the Series 3 you get an SUV. From a design perspective, it's fairly traditional, I would say, for an SUV, right? So you have simple shapes, quite a well-proportioned design, and overall it feels very typical of what you expect from a modern SUV. Now you also get modern amenities, so we have full LED lighting all around, LED headlights, LED tail lights. Because this is an EV, you don't have a grille, so we have this interesting pattern over here, and the 18-inch wheels are standard with this car. Now, if you go check out the back, now here we have a slightly tapering roof line, but it's still fairly tall, so you're gonna have good amounts of space inside, and it ends off in a little spoiler over here. And if we check out the boot, we've got a decent sized boot, right? So it's not going to pass the anti-trolley length test, unfortunately, but you know, it will fit a big luggage. And I think all things considered, this is going to be quite family friendly, big loading aperture as well, so going to be easy to get stuff in and get stuff out. And one more thing, this car also comes with a full-size spare tire here underneath. Now let's go jump inside the car and check it out.
The Series 3 is priced at $169,500. The electric motor produces 161 brake horsepower and 195 Nm of torque. The single-speed transmission brings the car from 0 to 100 km/h in 8.9 seconds. The 54 kWh battery has a drive range of 331 km. For more details on the Series 3 or any other car, head on to sgcarmart.com to help you make a smart choice on your next car.
Now, before we jump in the rear seats, one interesting thing I want to show you, right? So if you wanted more boot space, you could fold the seats down. These are 60-40 split seats, right? So, for example, however, it's not completely flat. If you want to do that, you could do this. Lift this up, pull this down, and now it folds completely flat. Same for this one, and then you have a really fully flat surface here at the back. So that really helps if you're hauling big cargo. Now here in the rear of the Series 3, space is quite good, right? So I have a good amount of legroom and actually quite a decent amount of headroom as well. And this is a comfortable space. I like actually the plushness of the seats, although I will say that I think the cushion's a little bit short for my liking. I wish it was a little bit longer, so it's a little bit more thigh support. But all things considered, this is a comfortable space to be in. We also have rear aircon vents and we have one USB-A port. Now, if I slide on over to the middle seat, so this is an EV, so we have an almost completely flat floor. That means that I can tuck my feet in, and I have size US 10.5 feet, and it still fits quite comfortably. And yes, the middle seat is a little bit on the narrow side, there's a little bit of a hump here, but it's still comfortable. I'm very happy to sit in this seat, and I think 3 adults can fit here in the back quite comfortably, even for longer journeys. So no real complaints about the space in the rear. Now let's go jump in the driver's seat. Now here in the driver's seat, from a design perspective, I would say that the cabin is on the simpler side, right? So you have a very simple color palette, mostly black and then a little bit of silver garnishes here and there. In terms of overall comfort, I think it's reasonable. I mean, it's gonna have quite a lot of plastics, but I think on some of your key touch points, right? So over here, even over here, and of course your seats as well, you get a little bit more plush materials, and I think it's a perfectly comfortable space. Now, speaking of comfort, there are a bunch of features here that are designed to ensure greater levels of comfort. So from an equipment standpoint, we have a 10.25 digital cluster, and then we also have an infotainment screen. Now let's quickly talk about the infotainment. So the interface itself is fairly simple. There's not much to it, right? Just your aircon, your music, your Bluetooth, whatsoever. However, there are a few useful features inbuilt. So you have inbuilt navigation, and you have actually wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. So that gives you access to your maps, your Spotify, your phone calls for people who use CarPlay a lot. So that's very, very useful. A couple of other interesting things, right? So first, we have a 360 camera, so you can operate it over here on the center console, and then you have your front, rear, left and right, and that's quite useful when you're parking. And with those cameras also you get a recording function. So let me find it. It's under DVR, and this essentially operates as your front dash cam, so you don't need a sort of third-party dash cam. It automatically will record when there's an emergency situation, or you can actually use it to record as you're going. So it's actually recording now, so then you can stop the recording and then you can just play it back. So if you want to, I don't know, dance in front of the car, feel free to do so. Now, if we move on down the console, right, so we have some of these physical buttons. So this is very good for quick adjustments to your volume, to your song settings, stuff like that. And you can of course toggle the display off and on. And we also have a wireless charging pad over here, nice and big, so that's nice and convenient. And I guess your most used controls are going to be here. So you have obviously your gear shifter, you have your temperature controls and your fan controls, so you can just click auto. And then you have your drive modes here, so there are 3 drive modes in total. And then you have an auto hold function, so that's, well, I use it a lot, so I like it. Couple of other things to point out. The steering wheel, fairly typical buttons on it. However, the one interesting thing that I will highlight is the fact that you have these 2, I guess, rotary dials that you see here, but they aren't actually dials because they don't actually rotate. They actually are just buttons that go up and down. So that's just something to take note. Now, a couple of other things, right? So we have a panoramic sunroof over here, and both the front seats are actually electrically adjustable. So that's good, that's useful. And all things considered, I think it's quite a minimalist cabin, right? I think the idea is that you don't want to have too many things to fiddle with. You have your easy access buttons where you need them to be, and then you can just focus on driving. So on that note of driving, let's go drive this car on the road and see how it feels. So how does the Series 3 feel on the road? So let's first talk about performance, right? So we have 120 kilowatts and 195 Newton meters of torque, which means that this car can complete the Century Sprint in 8.9 seconds, which honestly is fairly quick, right? It's worth pointing out, of course, that this car is a Cat B car. And if you put your foot down, it's got a good amount of pull to it. It's not overly quick, it's not going to kick you in the back of the head in terms of performance, but I think for day-to-day driving, for the kind of mundane 80-90% of the driving that people will be doing, I think this is the kind of car you want, right? It's simple, it's got good enough performance, and it's easy to drive. So we of course also have to talk about some of the safety features. So we have lane departure warning, we have front collision, we have ESP. This car is going to take care of you, so you don't really have to worry too much about it. So fundamentally, this is quite a simple and straightforward EV to drive, right? You just hop in, start the car and go. You don't have to worry about configuring it too much. There are of course some things you can change, right? You can change things like the strength of the regeneration, you can change the drive mode, stuff like that. But ultimately, I think it's one of those things where you just set it in the setting that you want and then you just leave it. You don't have to adjust anything, you don't have to worry about profiles and all that kind of thing. It's just going to be quite simple and quite straightforward. And honestly, sometimes that's what you want out of your car. Now let's also talk about the battery. So this car has a 54 kilowatt hour battery with a WLTP range of 331 km. And it has a quoted energy consumption figure of 17.7 kilowatt hour per 100 km. Right now, I am doing 17 kilowatt hour per 100 km and have 323 km of range with 92% battery left, which means that I will probably exceed the quoted range by a little bit. And honestly, I must say that that's a perfectly usable number, right? I mean, it's all things considered not a huge battery. 54 kilowatt hours is on perhaps the smaller side in the market right now, but the numbers are believable and you can get a good amount of range out of it. Now in terms of charging, you can of course charge this car using DC charging from 20 to 80% in just 30 minutes. And if you're worried about battery life, for peace of mind, this car comes with an 8-year or 250,000 km battery warranty, whichever comes first. And for even more peace of mind, when you buy a Series 3, there is also a 24-hour rescue service free of charge available to you. So the Series 3, is it a will buy, won't buy, or go try? I think this is a go try. So this Series 3 is priced at $57,000 before COE, and with your CAT B COE, you're looking at somewhere in the region of maybe $160,000, right? And that means that this Series 3 sits right exactly in a quite crowded and honestly quite competitive segment right now. You're gonna have cars like obviously your Atto 3, your MG4s, your Ioniq 5s, your Good Cats, all cars that are electric, SUV, crossover size in that kind of price range, right? But it's worth pointing out, of course, that most of those cars are CAT A models, so this Series 3 is actually priced really competitively against those cars. And in terms of what do you want out of your car, right? I think ultimately that's going to be the big question. So you really have to drive the different cars. They all feel a little bit different, they all size differently, they all have different design languages, and you have to figure out what do you want. And I think where this Series 3 excels perhaps is the fact that it's quite a straightforward car. It's quite simple, it's easy to use, and I think for what you're getting for your money, I think it's quite decent value. Now, in terms of actual direct competitors in the CAT B segment, perhaps you're looking at something like the Omoda E5, but I think this undercuts that quite a little bit in terms of price. And then you have something like perhaps your Aeon Y, another Chinese brand, which is perhaps a little bit cheaper, but I think in terms of quality, you can tell the difference, right? So ultimately, if you are shopping in this segment, perhaps, getting your first electric car, getting your first electric SUV, there are a ton of options, a ton of new options, honestly. Within this past 6 months, perhaps you're gonna have a whole bunch of new brands that perhaps you haven't really heard of very much. And I think the Series 3 is a serious contender, right? It offers a good amount of equipment, a good driving experience at a very competitive price point, and it's definitely worth considering. So yes, that's our review of the new Series 3. Let us know what you think about this car in the comments below, and of course do remember to like, share and subscribe to our channel. And you can also hit a notification bell to be alerted of all our upcoming videos. And of course check us out on TikTok at Sgcarmart. So that's all I have. I'll see you in the next video. Bye! Honestly, it's quite quick, right? If I put my So yes, that's our review of the new Series 3. Do remember to what else do you say?